The new soldering station has arrived and I can continue building the sequencer now. I ordered some new solder too. Here, it's got a lot of good reviews on the internet, so I hope it's even better than my old one. I wanted just to be sure, or I still want to be sure, that everything works out fine this time. This solder consists of 95.5% tin, 95.5% tin, 3.8% silver, and 0.7% copper. Its melting point, it's a bit higher than with my old solder, which melted at about 180 to 190 degrees Celsius. This new one here melts at 217 degrees, as it said. So my usual 315 degrees or 325 sometimes degrees working temperature should do well even with this U here. And the company I bought it from calls it SMD solder. Well, we will see. But I did even a bit more to ensure success now. I bought two different flux pens here to directly bring flux on the melting points, sorry, the soldering points, of course, on the PCB before I bring the solder on. One of them is meant to be used with unleaded solder, as it's written here. It's this one with unleaded solder, which is my new one, as you have heard some minutes ago, no lead in it. And the other one is called here flux for SMD soldering. I suppose it's also for unleaded solder, as my new unleaded solder is named SMD solder. Well, but supposing is not the kind of strategy I want to apply here, so let me do some tests, therefore. I've got a PCB here, completely covered with copper. I'm going to bring some solder on it using the following 5 constellations. First, my old leaded solder without any flux. Second, the new solder without any flux. Third, the new solder with a flux called flux for SMD. Fourth, the new solder with the flux called expressively for unleaded solder. And fifth, my old leaded solder with the flux called flux for SMD. All right, let me get going now. All right, so my old leaded solder, just here, heat the point a bit. And it doesn't work. Of course it doesn't get hot enough, this huge plate. We have our well-known little balls of copper. Try again a bit. No. No. Okay. That's made it. So now the new one, without flux still, the second experiment. Trying to heat the point a bit. Of course, I know that soldering these copper plates, for soldering these copper plates, I have the wrong tip here. but it's an experiment of, I have to find out the quality of the flux and of the different attributes, let's say attributes of the different solder. That's going a bit better, but still nothing, because yes, you see nothing. It doesn't even hold a little bit on the plate. Okay, I remove. Good. So next I bring on the flux called flux for SMD. Let me have a look. No, it's the other one. It's this one. Yes. No. Where is it? Here, flux for a minute. I've read it here. Yes, okay. So all right. And the new solder, I said, maybe shall be experiment number 3. Strange. Now it doesn't even melt. It's even worse than without flux. All right. I don't even have to clean the tip because there isn't anything, nevertheless I do, there isn't anything on it. Okay, experiment number 4 is the new solder with the flux expressively called for unleaded solder. So it seems to be clear. This one, the so-called SMD solder and my new SMD flux and my new solder, they don't work together. So let's try the other one called flux for unleaded solder. Together with my new solder. Something has fallen. And again, nothing happens. It doesn't melt. Here. Okay. This the last experiment with this copper plate is my old leaded solder with the flux called flux for SMD. So flux for SMD, here is it. Okay. Heat the plate. And again, nothing. Ah, yes. But there's no difference to my first experiment with no flux at all. Well, I've got the best test results with my old solder here and without any flux, but still these results are insufficient, as I will show you in a macro photo in a moment, or right now, I don't know how I will cut it. In between, I have changed the tip here of my soldering iron. It's broader now and it brings on more energy to the place, and I hope to get some, let's say, different, meaning better results in this second row, second series of tests. All right, so first, again, I heat the soldering point a bit with this broader tip, and you don't use any flux, and use my old leaded solder. Well, indeed better, definitely better. So I remove the solder from the tip using a wet sponge. Second, yes, putting the iron away. Second, the new solder without any flux. So now the new solder brought on the plate with the broader tip of the soldering iron. And wow, yeah, it's indeed better than before. Okay. Next, the new solder with a little bit of flux called flux for SMDs. Heating the place. And not very, no, okay. Looks a bit strange, but well, we will see when we make some close-up photos. Next is the new solder again, but with the other flux, expressively called flux for unleaded solder. Okay, perhaps a little bit, and bringing the solder on. Ooh, that seems to be very bad. Okay, and the last is my old leaded solder with a flux called flux for SMD. I remove the remaining solder from the tip. What you hear is the iron touching the wet sponge. Number 5. Not so much. So, all right. First heating the place and bringing on the solder. Oh, bad. No. I've cut these 5 tiny pieces of PCB plus a little bit of copper from the bigger plate, and try with these ones. First, like always, my old leaded solder without any flux here, and the broad tip again. Just a moment, we're waiting a moment. Bring. Wow, no problem. Great. I need some tweezers. Here. Yes, wonderful. So removing the solder. Now the same, no flux, with the new solder. Waiting a minute. Not a minute. Why do I say always a minute? Some seconds. Okay. Also a great, really great soldering point. Well, now for the flux. Looks like I don't need it even. The new solder with the flux called flux for SMD. Okay. So, flux for SMD. And the new solder. Heating up. Some seconds, not a minute. Bringing on the solder. And it's even better and easier. It's faster, indeed. Okay. So this was flux for SMD, number 3. I don't have to change the order of the pieces later when I compare all the results of my experiments. And number 4, the new solder with the flux expressively called for unleaded solder. This is the SMD, and now it's for unleaded solder. Yes, it's that here. All right. Study this. Yeah. All right. New solder is this one. It's even smaller. Yeah, and it's even faster. It's really helpful. So, what's number 5? My old solder with the solder called flux for SMD. This one. Okay. A little bit more. Yeah, now it's better. It's much. It's too much. I'll remove it a bit. All right, my old solder now. Heating up a bit. Bring on the solder now. No, that's worse. The result is good as well, but with the old solder, it's better without any of these two flux kinds. Okay, so I will bring these pieces back to the huger PCB board to compare all 3 series of experiments. So, what is the overall result of these 3 series of tests? Well, I'd say clear, the broad tip for my soldering iron with the small soldering points. It worked wonderfully without problems. All 5 soldering points are okay. The easiest way was my old solder without any flux, and I think I will start working with that. The broad tip, my old solder, and no flux. And when it comes to soldering the 2 SMD elements, we will see.